President Joe Biden is back in South Carolina over the weekend, just 1 week ahead of the Democratic presidential primary. Biden is looking to build momentum among black voters in a state that helped save his campaign against Donald Trump in 2020. I want to play a clip of what one voter had to say about the president's visit.
What I do know that has worked in the past is that when you have one-on-one contact, that means you got involved. You got involved as seniors. You got to come to our senior citizens. You got to come to the bingo halls. You definitely got to get to our church groups because we are talking about these things, but we're using our spiritual enlightenment as to how to deal with that, and we are telling them, y'all got to vote.
So joining me now from the Capitol is CBS News White House reporter Bo Erickson. Bo, good morning. It's good to see you this morning. With President Biden, there is no competition. He is the nominee, but he sure has been giving South Carolina a whole lot of love. Why was he down there? What was he hoping to achieve this weekend?
So under the current Biden Democratic Party, they changed the primary calendar so that South Carolina, the state that really propelled Biden to the presidency starting way back in the 2020 campaign, they are now voting first. And their primary, while there isn't a major challenger, is this Saturday. And there is a little concern, especially like from that one voter, Miss Elaine, that not a lot of people will show up to the level of maybe a 2020 level, and that could then be kind of flipped to say, oh, the president doesn't have as much support as he thinks he does. However, the president was in Columbia, South Carolina, that state's capital, this weekend, and he's trying to really kind of dredge up support amongst some of these most loyal fans of his. And the way that he did this, Anne-Marie, is one, he kind of released this new phrase that was promises made, promises kept. The White House has acknowledged that they need to do a better job connecting legislative successes to some of these real-world benefits. So he was telling the South Carolina Democratic dinner this weekend that he made promises about some student loan forgivenesses, and he followed that through. He made promises about connecting rural areas of America, like in South Carolina, with more affordable internet access, and he followed that through. One big win that he was touting was that he really increased the funding levels to historically black colleges and universities, which received a huge response down in South Carolina because they have a number of those schools. And the other tactic that the president is starting to do on the campaign trail is he's really trying to dig and get under the skin of former President Donald Trump. Specifically, he's kind of starting to troll him and be a little bit more forceful. Just one quote that stuck out to me was he told the South Carolina Democrats that you are the reason why Donald Trump is a loser, and we are going to defeat him again with your support. So he's trying to kind of make this contest about the general election now in November, even though the Republican presidential primary is still technically ongoing between Mr. Trump and Nikki Haley.
That's very interesting. And I know, a lot of what he was saying to South Carolina voters was, hey, here's a reminder. I promised you certain things, and I delivered. I promised you a black Supreme Court justice, female, and I delivered. I'm the person that delivers on promises. But that reinforces the support of the base. Was there any messaging that you heard that was also reaching out to maybe undecideds, maybe even Republicans, issues related to immigration and this border deal? Anything along those lines?
So specifically about immigration, that is an issue that has been going up in the polls as now a #1 issue in polls for about a third of the general electorate. So both the president and his campaign have now started to talk more about the immigration issues down at the southern border. In the past couple months to the past year or so, the president has been a little reluctant to talk about this. Now the president is starting to have a more forceful message about being more forceful down the southern border and limiting some legal levels of immigration. Specifically on Saturday night to the South Carolina Democrats, he talked that this negotiated package between the White House and a bipartisan group of senators right now, that if it is passed, it would be the toughest the smartest and the fairest border security bill in history. And he said if this bill was passed the way that it's being negotiated now, there's this presidential authority in it to kind of limit asylum processes in not legal ports of entry, so for those who are crossing the border illegally. The president said on Saturday night that if this bill passed, he would shut down the border right now. So he is trying to bring an immediacy to this issue for some voter benefit.
Very interesting. Bo, thank you very much.